Welcome back to the Automation Podcast, the world's #1 industrial automation product and technology show, thanks to you, our audience of highly skilled automation professionals. Thank you for being a member of our audience, and thank you for tuning back in this week. And if you're new to the show, my name is Sean Tierney from Insights in Automation. And in this week's episode, I meet up with Johan Cortez from Rockwell Automation to learn all about what's new in FactoryTalk View version 15 and 16. But before we get to that, I have a couple of announcements. If you are a member at YouTube or the Automation blog, or you're a student in my VUSC course over at the Automation School, because this episode is not sponsored by the vendor, you will be getting an extended version of this episode, commercial free. So I want to thank all of you who are members or who have purchased my VUSC course over at the Automation School. I actually have some new information coming in that VUSC course, so keep an eye on that. You may want to visit in the next week or two to check that out to learn what's coming for that course. Now, that said, another public service announcement I have is that I'm actually holding programmable controller training here the week of April 21st. So this is the first training I'm doing publicly open enrollment for classes right here. And I think I'm doing something unique that you will not find anywhere else. You can choose whether you want to do 1 to 4 days, and you can also choose which PLC you want to learn on each of those days. So you could come and learn on Compact Logics all week, or you could choose 2 days of Compact Logics and 2 days of Micro 800. I actually have one student who's just coming for 2 days of Micro 800. That's all he needs to know. And you could choose S7 1200. You could even mix. You could do a day of S7 1200, a day of Micro 800, and a day of Compact Logics. So the equipment is limited. I do have 8 setups of everything, but I'm limited on computers and space, so I can't have 24 people here at the same time. So if you're interested in some hands-on training, we're 1 hour east of Albany, New York. Okay, so 2.5 hours west of Boston. So if you're in the greater Albany area, or you're in southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, western Mass, eastern New York, we've even had people come as far away as Pittsburgh to come here. So if you're within driving distance, please consider coming to that course or sending somebody who works for you to the course if you have somebody who needs to get some hands-on with PLCs. I will also be doing lectures. This is not a dump and run where you sit in front of a computer all day with a lab manual and you're not going to get any valuable insights into the product. I will be doing lectures. I actually set up a second office here just to do the lectures. So when I'm doing Allen Bradley lectures, the Siemens guys can do their hands-on and vice versa. So check that out over at theautomationschool.com. And with those PSAs out of the way, let's go ahead and learn what's new in FactoryTalk View 15 and 16. Johan, thank you for coming back on the Automation Podcast and Show. I'm really looking forward to getting this update on FactoryTalk View. And I know we had a great episode when you came on to talk about View 14. And of course, now we have 15 and 16 out. So I really appreciate you coming back on the show. And for those who may not have caught that last episode we did together, could you just take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Sean. And thank you for inviting me back to speak about what is new in FactoryTalk View software portfolio. As you noted, my name is Johan Cortez. I am a product manager for FactoryTalk View Site Edition, Machine Edition, Viewpoint, and Alarms and Events. I have been with Rockwell Automation for just over 17 years. I actually began my career as a project engineer in South Africa within the system and solution business, which is now called our lifecycle services business. And in 2016, I moved to the United States and joined the Plant PX team. So those that are familiar with the Plant PX team and the process libraries, I basically served as the Plant PX library architect for several years, in fact. And then later, I was part of the Plant PX system architect for around a year. And when we spoke last, I had just recently joined the visualization business as the product manager for the visualization software. I've been in this role now for going 2.5 years. And as I say, time goes by fast, right? When you're having fun. So I'm just going to dive into the slides here. As I mentioned earlier, the last time we spoke, we reviewed what was new in FactoryTalk View version 14. At the time, we described that release as one of the most feature-rich updates we had delivered in a long while. So today, I want to highlight some of the key updates in FactoryTalk View versions 15 and 16. You will notice several common themes. We built on version 15 capabilities that resonated with our users and extended them to deliver more value in their day-to-day use. This session will really only scratch the surface, by the way. Both releases include many additional enhancements. My goal today is to cover a few highlights and demonstrate several features live during the session. So for those that may not be familiar, we released FactoryTalk View version 15 in September of 2024. And the areas we will focus on today include support for external InfluxDB and InfluxDB Cloud Serverless, MQTT support, performance improvements, FactoryTalk alarms and events, email notifications, and the runtime navigation menu support for multiple navigation menus.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Johan just said, there's a lot more things on this slide. So if you're listening, there's a lot more things on the 15 and 16 slide that we just can't get to in one show. So if you are listening, check out those two slides at the beginning of the presentation, and I'll turn it right back to you, Johan.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. The same thing here. For those that may not be familiar, we released FactoryTalk View version 16 in October of 2025. And again, today I will focus on several key areas of this release. First, on new control objects. These include a toggle switch control and a linear gauge object with an integrated spark line. Next are streamlined navigation options. These updates include a runtime navigation sidebar that can be docked to the left and the right-hand side, and a new horizontal dock navigation submenu. We also introduced an enhanced system status portal. This allows you to monitor FactoryTalk View Historian SE server statuses, which was introduced in version 15, as well as FactoryTalk Asset Center server and agent statuses that was introduced in version 16. And then finally, what we're going to focus on is what was added in version 16, adds Datalogue Pro integration with InfluxDB 3 Core and Enterprise. Maybe just before I dive into the slide, something I just want to note. I know this is sort of going to be, some people might not have the visuals, but if you do look at the visuals and there's a slide, you'll notice there's some icons here at the bottom. So this is really where it's going to show you in which product this feature belongs. And some will have a circle icon with a number in it, with either 15 or 16, that will indicate in which version it was introduced. So I'm going to try and keep the topics next to each other. So when I talk about something that was done in version 15 and 16, those will just follow next to each other in the slides. The one thing I really wanted to show here, most audience members here probably go to our Rock Automation literature library to go search for our documentation and download it. I'm not sure how many of our audience members are aware, but if you go to our Rock Automation website, we have this thing called the Technical Documentation Center. You can go to specific products, and actually, if you go to products, all our documentation will be grouped together there. So one of the nice things we did for version 16, well, I hope it's nice for the audience members, is we've actually now included our online help that you get when you install the product as part of this web page experience. So what's the advantages of having these online pages? You don't have to go create, let's say, a virtual machine and go install FactoryTalk View anymore to go get the online help. You have to go to help, content, and then online help is usually there. And the second advantage here is if we have to do documentation updates or online help documentation updates, we can actually publish it the next day. So you don't have to wait for the next release to see those updated documents. It's just live the next day when we do that. So I can just quickly show you what this looks like. So here I'm actually on our Rock Automation website. I went to our human machine interface software technical documentation. What you'll notice is here's all our documentation grouped together. You don't have to go search for them individually on the literature library. What we've added here, like I said, is the online help. So let's say, for example, we've got the FactoryTalk View online help here. I'm just going to open this as a new page. Now this is online. I can go something like trends, and maybe I can do something like the trend interface. So here's the online help, where in the past you had to go to the physically into Studio, go to help, content, FactoryTalk View, and you would have gotten the same thing by clicking on the trends and interface. Moving on to my next topic, performance enhancements. So as everybody know, with any software package, every time we do a new release, there's more content. So either the installation media grows, doing the installation takes longer, opening up your projects becomes longer, and your runtime clients are doing the same thing. So we really try to focus on version 15 to enhance this experience and make sure that we get some performance out of it. So what will you see when you install FactoryTalk View version 15? When you do the installs, it's actually significantly faster now to do the install on your machine. Number two, specifically, well, not specifically, but typically for larger applications, if you now open up View Studio, you should see a 30 to 40% increase in speed and opening up that application as well, which is significant. As well, if you open up your runtime client, especially again with large applications and multiple HMI applications in that HMI service in that application, you'll see a 30 to 40% boost there as well, opening up that runtime client. And then lastly, is probably going to be a once-off for the audience members. But if you are doing migrations, let's say from a V10 application to a V15 application, you should see an increase of on about 50% faster doing that migration over to, let's say, V15. One of the things which was really great to hear when I was at the Automation Fair, we actually had a couple of customers come up to us and say they really appreciated this. They could see the performance increase. So my recommendation to anybody that's still struggling, do I go to version 14? Do I go to version 15? This is one of those easy decision makers. Because of the performance enhancement, go to V15 because you'll have a better experience at the end of the day. All right, let's go on to the next topic. So some of our audience members might not be familiar with what we did in version 14, so I'm just going to talk through that. In version 14, we introduced a new data logging system, which we basically call Datalog Pro with InfluxDB. It's basically logging to a time series database from InfluxDB. In version 14, we were telling you could only log the data onto your local HMI server, which also supported redundancy. So if you had a redundant system, you just had to install that same database on your secondary HMI server, and you got that redundancy support. Now, obviously, we're trying to keep up with user requirements, and we're trying to keep up with the technologies that InfluxDB is putting out there. So this was an easy one for us because being able to connect to an external InfluxDB and connecting to something like InfluxDB Cloud Serverless, the workflows were very similar. So now we have those capabilities. The one thing I just want to mention, everybody asks all the time, well, what if I lose my connection to my external InfluxDB? The nice thing is we just automatically start logging to our local DB once that connection is lost. And once that connection is reestablished, it will actually just backfill the data to the external InfluxDB, so you will have no losses. The one thing that you will notice if you now open up that Datalog Pro configuration menu from version 14 to 15 is now you have the capability of either selecting your local database, which is on your HMI server, or connecting to that remote database out there.
In the past, if we go way into the past, right, we were typically, if we just wanted to create some, quick historical trends, we'd use the data log with the built-in file sets. And then, if we're doing something more that we really needed data in a database, we use an ODBC. A lot of times we'd go to SQL Server Express because it's there's already an instance installed, so you can install another instance on the same box. But it sounds like what you're saying is there's been a lot of demand for influx in the from your customers. So in 14, you added that support. And now, and what that gave you was the ability to also not only do a local influx DB, but also a remote connection. And that brings us to this slide where you're talking about the new Datalog Pro features. So let me just pitch it right back to you, Johan.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. The feature was driven into the product because of customer requests and the popularity of InfluxDB. Again, going from version 14 to 15, we had a lot of interest in this feature. So there was some additional ask or enhancements requests. So this is what this slide is all about. One of those enhancements were, hey, how do I know if my connection to my InfluxDB is still healthy, right? So what you've now introduced is if you go to your functions and go to Datalog Pro, there's a new function called DB connection state, which basically gives you 4 states. So what you can either do here is you can either go and animate something on your HMI with a state to say, well, you've lost your connection, or you can actually create an alarm, which will come up in the alarm banner and say, well, you've lost your connection. Please go investigate why that connectivity has been lost. So that was a pretty good feature to add. The same thing here was, if you are familiar with Datalog models, if you go click on the right click on the data model, you had a context menu where you could stop and start that data log. Now, we didn't have that in version 14 on our Datalog Pro, so that was like a small enhancement. Instead of going to the command line and starting and stopping the data logs, can you have that same context menu on there? And because we've had such a big interest in this new Datalog Pro feature, people were asking, well, how can I migrate my current Datalog models to InfluxDB or Datalog Pro? So we try to make that easier. So we do now have a migration option. How this is handled essentially is you have to go add all the tags that you are using in your Datalog models into your Datalog Pro. Once that's done, you click on the migration button, you go to the database for the Datalog models, click on that DB file, and you just say migrate. And then that basically backfills all your data to your new Datalog flow with InfluxDB. And you basically can just automatically switch over to that logging mechanism. So
now I think that could take a long time if you had a very large database that you're moving, right?
Correct. It could take some time, but I think the benefits of it is still valuable if you want to go to the new or to newer technologies.
Yeah, and we won't get into this today, but if you guys want to look up the difference between a relational database and a time series database, relational databases are not the best for the kind of data that we collect with a SCADA system or an HMI system. So I could tell stories about that, but I'll pitch it back to you, Johan.
Maybe something to mention to the audience here as well. Licensing. This is all free, by the way. So if you're using the local database, there's no additional licensing cost there. But if you are logging to something like an external database, external influx database, like an enterprise InfluxDB or like the cloud, obviously there's cost and services associated with that. But that's something outside of View. That's how you license those products internally in your organization. But essentially, using this feature is no licensing cost. It's free out of the box experience that you can just use.
Nice.
And the last one here that I just going to talk. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but again, I mentioned earlier, we're trying to keep up with InfluxDB and all the technologies or services that they are providing out there. So last year, I believe, I think it was in November or December, they released InfluxDB 3 Core and Enterprise. The workflow to connect to these are exactly the same. There's no difference in the connection properties. It's just we now can log to InfluxDB 3 Core and Enterprise with no issues. The one thing here just to note is we recommend if you are going to connect to an Influx DB3 Core or an Influx DB Enterprise, deploy those on a Linux operating system. It does work on Windows, but we've seen some stability issues which we are working with InfluxDB to help resolve those. But from their point and stance, they say, well, it's better to actually just deploy those on Linux operating systems.
Hey guys, I just wanted to break in here quickly for a minute to thank our members over on YouTube and theautomationblog.com and my VUSC students over at theautomationschool.com. You all will be receiving an extended version of this unsponsored episode in appreciation for your $5 a month or for enrolling in my course because this episode was not sponsored by the vendors. So really appreciate you guys. Check that out. You should be seeing it very quickly if you're a member. The automation school will come a little bit later because I have some traveling to do, and it's actually going to be part of a lot of other things you're going to be getting in that USC course. So keep that out. Thank you both very much. And now let's get back into learning what's new with Factory Talk View version 15 and 16. So I got a couple questions for you. I mean, InfluxDB, I'm seeing a lot of usability features that I like in what you're showing versus like SQL Server Express. So I can see why some people, especially corporate-wide, would be using InfluxDB. And of course, it's time series, not relational. But it also seems like Datalog Pro, one of the advantages is per tag scan rates or data collection rates, I should say. Like, I don't remember that as being a feature. It was your Datalog model was set up to be either, it was the whole model. You had to get all the data at a particular rate. Am I correct about that, or am I missing something?
You are very correct in that stating that.
That seems like a huge advantage.
That is a huge advantage. Obviously, we are currently saying, if I remember correctly, you can log 50,000 tags per scan on your deadlock models, but that's at a one scan interval. Obviously, the more tags you have with a smaller interval, the smaller that the on-scan tags will become at the end of the day. But 50,000 tags on scan is quite a lot for a lot of users out there.
Well, that brings up another point. I know with the data log models for years and years, it's always been you can have up to 20 data log models, in your data logs, and you can run. Well, on the PNW Plus was always something different. Machine Edition was different. In SC, you could run them all or just run some of them. I guess you could have 20 running at a time. But with Datalog Pro, it looks like you have one configuration to one influx database. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. So that's a differentiator as well. And something that the audience needs to know about.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you. No, appreciate it.
All right. I'm going to switch gears and go to the next topic. So I don't know our audience members how far they are down with the MQTT journey. I know a lot of people request the functionality for MQTT, but once you actually talk to them, say, well, are you actually doing the implementation? My experience is no, they haven't really touched it, or they're not really have implemented on site. It's only on their test beds at the moment. But what we try to do here in version 15 is make MQTT support a little bit easier for our user base out there. Now, you can do MQTT today in, let's say, version 14. The catch there just is everything is done in VBA. You have to go create your own VBA code to make this support. Now, in version 15, it's still VBA in the background. What we try to simplify this for you. We try to reduce the amount of VBA code that you have to use and give you examples of exactly how to do this. So in version 15, we actually support MQTT clients for supporting publisher and subscribers. We do not support brokers. And we're basically giving you integrated VBA libraries. The nice thing about these libraries is it does support TCP and WebSocket with optional TLS for reliable, secure messaging, and also works with MQTT version 5.0 and 3.1 for a broad system, user capability. All right, going to move on to the next one. FactoryTalk alarms and events, email notifications. Now, I actually always start with this. So this is really not intended to go and replace your third-party solutions, which already does your email notification systems. This is really for those users out there that don't want to spend the money on an email notification system. They just want something that's very basic. An alarm comes in and they get notified over email. So again, this is not intended to replace that, but just support those customers that don't have the funds or don't want to spend the money on something like this. So this is going to be a very Very limited functionality. Obviously, we get requests all the time to do enhancements, so we take those into consideration, and we'll see how we can do this in the future. The one thing I do want to mention, this is not dependent on FactoryTalk View. It's actually dependent on FactoryTalk Service Platform. So if you're running version 13 today and you update your FactoryTalk Service Platform to 650, you will get this functionality.
Hey guys, just breaking in here quickly to pay some bills, and I want to tell you about some of the unique features of this course I'm holding right here, April 21st through the 24th. When you sign up, you're going to be picking what hardware you want to work on, Compact Logix, Micro 800, or S7 1200. But then when you're here, you're going to be able to choose from 4 different labs, okay? So we have PLC Basics, we have Beyond Basics, we have Mastering Applications with Factory IO. That's right, I have Factory IO installed on all the computers in there. So you'll be able to do that and actually solve some pretty complicated applications. And then the 4th option is Distributed IO. I got 9 Distributed IO options here. I have more in the other room. Some are Siemens only, some are Rockwell only, some will work with both. But in any case, you'll be able to sit here in a nice safe environment and try plugging in and connecting all kinds of different distributed IO to your PLC. Of course, you're going to have to put your lab number down on top of the device that you're using so somebody else isn't trying to connect to it at the same time. But with over a dozen different distributed IO options, hopefully not too many people will be trying to use the same exact one at the same time. In any case, so that's going to be something unique. So that, in addition to be able to solve applications with Factory.io, you don't have to go out and spend a few $100s to buy a license. You can actually just do it here for the day. And it's all self-paced. So you can go from the basics, Beyond Basics, Factory.io, Distributed IO, and whatever or you want. You're just reserving which hardware you're going to use that day when you sign up for that course on April 21st through the 24th. Again, you can choose 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, or 4 days. But the seats are limited. So if you want to come, again, we're 1 hour east of Albany. If you want to come, please sign up right away over at theautomationschool.com/live. And with that, let's get back to learning what's new in FactoryTalk View SE version 15 and 16.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. This has actually been probably one of the most popular features that we've had since the introduction of version 14. So for our audience members out there that don't know about this feature, we introduced this capability called the runtime navigation menu. Now, today, if you want to go build out navigations on your application, it's a very tedious task, right? You have to go create buttons, you have to go put the commands in. If you want to do some breadcrumbing on there, there's some additional animation that you have to put on there. So it's a very tedious process to build that out. So what we did in version 14 is giving you the capability of structuring your displays in a hierarchy. Once you open this runtime navigation configuration, you just drag and drop that hierarchy, click the save button, and your navigation is built out for you automatically. It's really simple and really easy. You also have the capability of doing breadcrumbing by selecting your scope of your alarms and your events, as well as a search capability. So I have the capability of click on the search icon, type in a tag. If you double click on a tag, it will actually navigate to that display where that tag is being used, and it will highlight that for you. So that was just a recap for those that do not know what the runtime navigation is. In version 15, there was a requirement from customers. We only limited to build out one of those navigation menus. Now you have the capability of building out multiple navigation menus. You can have as many as you want. And the use case here is really, well, I've got client 1 and client 2. I want the navigation menus to look different for the 2 different operators. So that's the reason why, one of the reasons why they want multiple navigation menus.
It seems like you're showing another example where they have 4 monitors, right? And they wanted a different menu for each monitor, which I think is cool as well.
Yeah, I think that is the edge case, by the way. I don't know how many people really want different navigation menus on the multi-monitor display, but it is possible to do that. So I might be wrong saying it's an edge case, but I think it's more relevant to different operating stations. All right. So again, like I said, it's a very popular feature. And we've had multiple requests to make enhancements. So a lot of our customers have come to us and say, well, we don't like docking our navigation menu at the top or at the bottom. they want to save that vertical space. So they want to be able to dock it to the left and to the right. So in version 16, we introduced support for that you can do that. It's very configurable. I know you might not be able to see the slide here, but you have the ability to specify you only want to show the icon of the navigation menu, or you can show the icon and the text. So it's very configurable at that point in time. Moving on to the next one. So I'm not sure how many of you are Plant PX users, but if you are a Plant PX user, you will know there's something called the graphical framework. And that's an easy way to build out a navigation menu using the Plant PX standards. How that navigation menu works, instead of having like a flyout a menu like if you do on your Windows start bar, they want the ability to stack the navigations on top of each other. So if I can try and give you a visual representation, you will have a navigation menu level 1 with buttons. If you click on one of the level 1 buttons, it will stack a second row of navigation menu items on at the bottom of that level 1, which is then your level 2 navigation. And if you click on that level 2 navigation, it will stack another one of these navigation bars underneath that level 2 to go to your level 3 navigations. The Plant PX team really want to use our built-in runtime navigation menu and get rid of the graphical framework or keep it in legacy support at that point in time. So we basically introduced this thing now called supported docked horizontal submenus. Again, it's difficult for the people that doesn't have visuals to see it, but it's the same concept. You have the ability to stack your navigation menus as many levels deep as you want. So this time we only show 3 levels, but just remember, the more levels you have, the less vertical space you get at the end of the day to work with. But again, if you click on the level 1 display, you'll get a drop down, which then basically stacks underneath that level 1, which is your level 2. Click on level 2, it will stack another navigation menu below that, which will be your level 3. Moving on to the next one here is just small usability enhancements. We've gotten some feedback. So when you do the navigation menu today, if you click on it and do the flyout, it will give you a little bit a highlight to say you are here. We've got the feedback that it's not that visible. So what we try to do is just give a little bar underneath that navigation menu to give you that we are here indicator. Another one was people said, well, they're using all the space for the runtime navigation menu. And when that happens, you get the off-page connector where there will be a drop down to navigate to something else. But let's say there was an alarm in that off-page connector. It's not visible, right? You can't go click on it and navigate to where the problem is. So they wanted us to propagate those alarm indicators to next to that off-page connector. So that's one of the enhancements we made. And we spoke about the search capability. They wanted us to increase the width of that search bar as well as word wrap all the content. So those are just some of the things we did here for the runtime navigation. All right, let's move on to some of the newer things that we did in version 16. So we tried to introduce some new objects into the platform. So one of them is a new toggle switch object, right? So again, it's one of those things we don't have this built in our products. So if you want to create something like a toggle switch or a checkbox or a radio button, you have to go build that out yourself. You have to go overlay multiple objects on top of each other and do animation on it to make it work. Now we're basically giving you an out-of-the-box experience, which is basically on-off control. You create that toggle switch, you have different shapes. You can either do a rectangle shape, you could do a pull form, you can do a checkbox or a radio button. One of the things about the radio button, it's not really a pure radio button indicator, but it's still on off. But you can go make that like a group control for radio buttons, whereby go doing some VBA in the background, and that VBA is basically just, well, if Radio button 1 is selected, uncheck radio button 2 and 3. If radio button 2 is selected, uncheck radio button 1 and 3, right? So you can make that group control work through some VBA in the background.
I know that a lot of times when we're doing selected switches, we'll use either a maintain button or we'll use a multi-state object, right? But this is nice to have these. They're very quick. You have your toggle left, rights, and you have your checkbox and radio buttons. And I can definitely see people liking these as just, hey, I don't want to have to go and make a picture or find a picture to do the toggle. I just have this toggle right here. And the examples you're showing are really good as well. So for anybody listening and not watching, you just need a toggle button, left, right, checkbox, radio button. It's now a new object, which is awesome.
Yeah. Just to mention here as well, this object does support e-signatures and also auditing.
Nice.
All right, moving on to the next one here. This has also been a very popular one at Automation Fair. So we created this new linear gauge object. So same concept applied. Today, if you want to use a linear gauge, I think we do have one there, but it's not very, very great. And you basically have to go build out your own linear gauge, group objects together, do animation to get something to work. Now, we created this linear gauge. We actually based this on our plant PX library of process objects linear gauge that was created because we want them to switch out their custom build one with our one. So we try to get as much functionality in here as well. Now, this is a highly configurable object, by the way. You can have as many properties enabled, or you can have a few properties if you want to enable. I know the audience here really can't see it, but I do have a linear gauge configured here, which basically has an alarm indicator, which is an icon that will show up if it goes above a threshold. We do have the value indicator. We have a target and expected range here as well. We've got underneath the object a value and a unit. We've got the thresholds. We've got set points, and we've got something that we have a concept of control limits in the library of process objects. This linear gauge can be in a vertical orientation or a horizontal orientation. And as well, like I said, you can make this as basic as possible. I've got another object on my slide here, which basically just have the value indicator and thresholds. So it's you can make the very bare minimum or as complex as you want. So moving on to an extension of this feature. So a lot of people want spark lines, and typically spark lines are used with linear gauges. So we said, well, why don't we just create a spark line with the linear gauge? So once you go into the properties of a linear gauge, you just have a checkbox that say enable the spark line, and that spark line will show up. The spark line is also very configurable. You can choose to show your threshold lines. You can choose your vertical and horizontal grids, how many lines you want for that. You can choose not to have a grid. You can also choose not to show the linear gauge. You just want to show the spark line. So again, people can't really see what's on the slide here. We was listening, but I do have an object here which has the full configuration with the linear gauge and the spark line with the grid and the trend showing up. And then at the bottom, I've got one that doesn't have the linear gauge, but it only shows the spark line. There's no grids. It's really just the trends that you are currently seeing. And we also support a vertical orientation and a horizontal orientation for this object.
Yeah, and for those who may not be familiar, if you're listening, the spark line looks like a trend. And you can have it without no background, and you can even have it without the with the linear gauge on it. So it just looks like the spark line itself. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. So like I said, it's like you can have this do with a linear gauge and spark line, just the spark line, or just the linear gauge. All right, moving on to the next one. I think this is the last one last feature that we're going to talk about. I always try and promote this one because I don't think a lot of people are aware of the System Status Portal. So for those that do not know what the System Status Portal is, it's basically a web page which shows you all your servers and what the health status of it is at that point in time. So the nice thing is you go click your application, it will show you all your HMI servers, it will show you your Alarm and Event servers, it will show you your data servers. And recently in version 15, we introduced the capability of showing your FactoryTalk historian server as well. And in version 16, we introduced now being able to see the health status of your FactoryTalk Asset Center server and its agents. But you don't have to install this on all your machines, by the way. You only have to install it on one. We typically recommend you install the system status portal on your FactoryTalk directory. And when you go create your HMI application, you can just do an embedded web page and just point to that link on the FactoryTalk directory, and it'll basically bring up the system status portal showing the overall health of your system at that point in time. We made a couple of enhancements in version 16 as well. In version 16, people want the ability to go into dark mode and into light mode. And they also, one of the things that they asked us, well, every time you go to the system status portal, you have to enter your credentials to be able to access the information in there. Once you navigate away from the system status portal and come back, you have to re-enter those credentials. So can you actually give us the keep me signed in functionality? So we were able to do that in this release. And moving on to my last slide here, I just wanted to talk about support. So in version 16, we now support Windows Server 2025.
Excellent. Yeah, these charts are key when you when you're looking to install the software to know which operating systems are supported.
And that's everything I wanted to run through. I hope the information we provided was helpful to you as well. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me directly. I don't have my details here, but I could probably give it to you, Sean, and people can just reach out to me if they have any questions or need to reach out directly to us.
Yeah, I'll definitely put it on the screen here. Johan, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I know, I mean, we've been talking for quite a long time, and you obviously can't show all of the new features in 15 and 16. But for those of you who want to know everything that was released and updated in those, go back to the very beginning where he had those slides up with all the new features. But I do appreciate you showing us what you did, and that is some really cool innovations. And I think the one great thing is your team took the time to make it faster, and I think we all appreciate that because over time some products get slower, and so when the team takes the time to go through and optimize the software to make it faster, that is such a huge thing. And then of course to see that you're adding new things like the linear gauge and like the toggle button, and you're adding things to the to all the things you covered today, especially expanding the menus, expanding the docking. I think the users really, really appreciate that. And I know I do. So thank you again for coming on the show, and I really appreciate it.
I appreciate being on the show. Thank you.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode, and I want to thank Johan for coming on the show and bringing us up to speed on FactoryTalk View 15 and 16. I also want to thank our sponsors, our members over at YouTube and theautomationblog.com, as well as our students in our VUSE course over at the Automation School. We would not be able to bring you these type of unsponsored episodes without your sponsorship, so we really appreciate it. Look out for that new extended edition, ad-free extended edition of this episode coming your way soon. With that said, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to wish you all good health and happiness. And until next time, my friends, peace.